Thanks. Just a moment. Hey everyone, and welcome to Chef AJ Live. I'm your host, Chef AJ, and this is where I introduce you to amazing people like you who are doing great things in the world that I think you should know about. Today's guests are Dr. Rick Dina and Dr. Karin Dina, and they are hosting the upcoming Energy Reset Summit. Do you ever feel like you need an energy reset? Well, this is Monday morning, and that's a day that a lot of people do. And what most people do to reset their energy or do things like go to Starbucks, but there is a better way, and both of these doctors know a lot about that. So please welcome them both to the show. It's so nice to see you both.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you.
It's always a pleasure to be here with you, AJ.
Well, thank you. You know, I'm not sure everybody is familiar with your work. You both have been guests on the show before, but you've never been on together. And actually, Dr. Rick, you were on the Truth About Weight Loss Summit a few years ago, and you did a fabulous presentation really debunking the myth of omega-3 fatty acids, meaning not that, of course, we need them, but you did such a great job explaining to people what they are, what they're good for. So why don't you tell our audience who you are, what you've been up to?
Sure. Well, first of all, as far as your show goes, AJ, you were a great example. We actually looked at your lab work and analyzed it and showed that you were in really good shape, including for omega-3s, even with 7 to 8% of your total calories from fat, because you consume lots of fruits and vegetables, including lots of green vegetables. And most people don't realize if you eat enough leafy greens, they actually add up and they're actually a good source of omega-3s. You know, one piece of iceberg lettuce on your cheeseburger doesn't do it, but mass quantities do. So just wanted to mention that. And Dr. Karin, do you want to introduce us a little and maybe talk about why we are having something called the Energy Reset Summit and how energy was really the initial impetus that got you interested in changing your diet?
Sure, I'd be happy to talk about that. We came up with this concept of talking about energy and making it the actual title, or should I say the whole idea behind this summit, because one of the things that we've noticed when we transitioned to a plant-based diet, both Dr. Rick and I, that we started to feel a lot more energy than we had on our previous diets. And for me, it was actually a really notable change. So after I transitioned from a standard Western diet, I started feeling really good. And then when I started adding more fruits and vegetables, I felt even better. And this was about 30 years ago. Now, do you think that I should talk a little bit about my story, or should I just keep it pretty simple?
Yeah, just mention it, maybe one or a couple minutes.
Okay. Yeah, I listened to a podcast with you, and it's true. Most people, when they improve their diet in any direction, start to feel better. But yeah, you had a lot of tests.
Yeah, I did, definitely. So about 30 years ago at this point, I was experiencing a lot of fatigue, and I was in college at the time, and I just wasn't getting the best out of myself. I just was feeling really run down, and even getting a full night's sleep just did not replenish my energy. And so I started to look for solutions. But before I did that, I actually went to several medical practitioners who ran a whole bunch of tests, and the tests all came back perfectly fine. It took them a while, but they finally gave me a diagnosis of fatigue of unknown origin. So at least pretty much at that point, I knew what I didn't have, but I really wanted to know what was going on. But they really didn't have all that much to offer me at the time. And so I figured, okay, well, I guess I have to figure this out by myself. Fortunately, though, a friend of mine gave me a book about plant-based diets. And it was one of the earlier books, and maybe some of you are familiar with it. It's a book by John Robbins. It's called Diet for a New America. And just a lot of what he said in there made sense. And so I started to implement what it was that he was talking about in that book. And I went from sleeping about 12 hours per night down to about 8 or thereabouts. And I felt a lot better, just a lot better. And then I came upon some other information that talked about adding more fruits and vegetables into my diet. And then that was when things really took off. I started to feel amazing. I went down to sleeping 6 or 7 hours per night. But what was most important was that I would wake up feeling refreshed. And it was like the best I had ever felt in my life. And a whole bunch of other symptoms went away too that I didn't even realize were issues at the time. I had like this chronic congestion that I'd had pretty much my whole life. And that disappeared, and a variety of other things did too. So after that, I figured, geez, everybody should know about this as being an alternative. And it's just wonderful to see that over the past 30 years that consciousness around plant-based diets has grown just to the degree that it has. And people are starting to take their health into their own hands and making a difference for themselves and for people around them. So that's kind of the basic story.
And you wrote a fabulous book about understanding the nutritional aspect of food.
Yeah, the Raw Food Nutrition Handbook, which is a very science-based,
It's right behind your right shoulder there.
Yeah, it's right here. For people who really like data, it's a wonderful book for that. It's really like if you want to get into the nuts and bolts behind raw food nutrition, or should I say, fruit and vegetable-based plant-based nutrition. So it's very good for that. I would say that if that's something that you like, that would be a good resource to check out.
Great, thank you. What about you, Dr. Rick? What brought you to this? Did you need an energy reset too?
Well, I didn't have a ton of energy, but I wasn't seriously fatigued like Dr. Karin was. But I had a lot of, I would get drained in energy every spring. I would get runny eyes and drippy nose. I'd blow my nose hundreds of times a day. And I would just feel like someone put a valve at the bottom of one of my ankles and opened it up and just drained all the energy out of me. It was really difficult. And I started eating healthier, but that didn't really change these allergy symptoms I was having in the spring. And, I was getting allergy shots once a week, and my arm would swell up, and I'd sleep all afternoon and didn't get my homework done. And that didn't really seem to be helping. But then I was getting into health and going to conferences with people like Dr. Goldhammer, who, is a major influence for you, Chef AJ, as I'm sure your viewers know. And I did a 14-day fast while I was a junior in college, living in my college dorm in the winter in Connecticut. So not the way to do it, but I didn't know any better. I was 20 years old. I was enthusiastic, a little bit reckless. And then when spring came along that year, my allergies were gone. I mean, I was 20 years old. They started when I was 6 or 7. So basically my whole life at that point. And I was just so astounded, and I felt so incredible. And 20 years later, when I graduated from chiropractic college, I ended up at True North Health and spent 4 years seeing other people have remarkable recoveries from fasting and realizing what the body can do. And when we give it the chance. And so what we try to do when we're not fasting, which is of course most of the time, is eat in a way that maximizes our body's energy and vitality and keeps us as healthy as possible. And we teach that. So we've been at that for about 15 years full time now, and it's a lot of fun.
That's fantastic. So what gave you the idea to do a summit?
Well, this is actually our 6th summit. It's a great community building event. We have all sorts of fantastic speakers, and including some people who have been, I think a lot of them have been guests on your show. And it's just a great way to get a bunch of experts together to share good information, to, just inspire people and educate them and get them dialed into the healthiest possible approach for them. And it's always a lot of fun. It's a lot of work, but a lot of fun too.
Absolutely. So many people think energy is energy drinks, Things like coffee, caffeine are not really good for somebody wanting more energy, are they?
You want to take that, Dr. Karin?
It's interesting. A lot of people, I think that's kind of what they've learned, that they think that in order to get more energy, that you need to actually put something into your body that's going to stimulate that. But really, if you want sustained energy that's going to make you feel good all day, that's going to give you the health that you're looking for, taking those stimulants away and then really focusing on other important things like getting enough sleep, exercising, food, obviously. And these are all the things that we're going to talk about, or should I say that we have spoken with our experts on our summit. So I'd really encourage you all to come and listen to the different points of view that we have from our speakers. We're going to talk about a lot of science, of course, understandable and relatable to people who don't necessarily have a science background. We also go into some deeper science as well. Then we also talk about some of the mindset aspects. And then, like I mentioned earlier, we're going to talk a little bit about sleep and exercise and some of the other aspects. And we bring it all together at the very end of the summit, where we put all the pieces of the puzzle together into a workable whole that can work well for you, to have you guys be able to understand and really make the most of your own energy without having to rely on any type of outside stimulants.
Yeah, great. Well, it's funny. I forget, somebody was telling me that in the community they live in, there was, I don't know, just some restaurant or I believe it was a Burger King, and it had business, but they closed it and they put in a Starbucks, and now like the line is around the corner. And whenever I go to the airport, which has been, over a year and a half, that's always the longest line at the airport, even bigger than McDonald's. Or Cinnabon. It's the coffee.
It tells you something.
Yeah. Well, they go to McDonald's first, and then that saps their energy, and then they need their coffee. So the line backs up. Maybe. I don't know. Yeah. Could I share a quick analogy just to answer your question, AJ, about, so I remember reading, early on into health, and someone was talking about it was an article in a magazine, and they were talking about something called the stimulant delusion. And they gave the example that a horse has been out, plowing a field with a farmer. This is, a long time ago. And the horse is tired and it really needs to rest. And someone cracks the whip on the horse. And then it looks like the horse has a lot of energy. It hurts, it gets going. Now it's plowing the field. And they asked the question, did the whip really provide energy for the horse? No, it just artificially stimulated it to then wear itself out. It really needed to rest, but then it didn't. And that's basically what things like caffeine do that are in these energy drinks and in coffee and whatnot. It just basically stimulates you to expend more of what you don't really have anymore. So it feels like you have energy temporarily, but then it doesn't really give you energy. So when you wake up the next morning, you need it again. And it's like you're in an addiction cycle, and that it doesn't have to be that way, which is so nice.
So many other doctors, even many in the plant-based space, really promote coffee, green tea, even the caffeinated version, saying it has so many health benefits, back protection against cancer, protection against Alzheimer's. But again, do we need it? That's the thing.
Well, we see that, and people make the same argument with a raw chocolate, for example. And yes, there are lots of good phytonutrients in those things, but then you also have this artificial stimulation component. Sometimes people don't sleep well, and then they don't address what really is sapping their energy because, they've got that quick fix there. And so there's a plus side and a downside, and we would prefer people to get all the plus sides of all those great phytonutrients from fruits and vegetables and other whole natural plant foods without the stimulant part of it, without the crutch. And then that really leads to just, in our opinions, much better overall well-being.
Definitely.
Yeah, I agree. I find that just having, I have sometimes green juice in the morning, and that gives me as much energy as somebody having a Red Bull.
Yeah, because that's awesome.
I feel the same way. Yeah, I've noticed that too.
That's Dr. Karen's typical breakfast: celery, cucumber, or sometimes just celery.
Yeah,
juice.
It makes a difference. Yeah.
Yeah, nice. So when does the summit start? I've been posting a link in the chat and in the show notes. I know it's 100% free. People can register. Some people say they already have.
Fantastic. It is coming up this Saturday, coming up soon, May 10th.
Wait, May 10th. May 10th is today.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. That's
Yeah.
today. I'm so on the next thing is Chef AJ show on May 10th. May 15th. Let me look at
Okay,
my calendar. Yes, May
great.
15th.
Nice. Nice. I was like, whoa, that's pretty soon.
Yeah,
That's
Yes,
it.
yes.
That's any minute. Yeah. I know one of the things that intrigued me, you were talking, I don't remember, I heard you talk about a salad dressing you guys make with red bell peppers. And I thought we were going to do a demo. We just couldn't work it out in kitchen wise. So we're going to give everybody the recipe in the show notes. And by show notes, I mean, just look on YouTube. You can see them right below the video. But maybe you could talk a little bit about why you love that recipe, how easy it is to make, and how really it meets all people's nutritional needs. People think that vegetables really don't have as many nutrients as they do. And I mean, your book is a perfect example that they do. But maybe you could talk about that a little bit.
Sure. Before we get into that, I just want to mention a couple of things. So on the show, we have some other True North influenced chefs making demos. We, of course, have Chef AJ on the summit. Wouldn't be complete without her. And what was really cool about our interview with you, Chef AJ, is instead of actually having a demo, where those are always valuable, right? To see how it's actually done. We just spoke to you basically about strategy, about how to make things really flavorful without fat, without, the energy sapping ingredients that a lot of people put into their recipes. And by doing that, instead of chopping and when watching, which again has its place, it was very, very information dense. So another good reason to tune in just to see Chef AJ, because obviously if you're here, you're a fan of hers, and it was just packed full of excellent information.
Thank you. Did
All
you have
right.
any interviews that you particularly enjoyed that you can give us a little spoiler alert on?
Oh gosh.
that's hard to say. They were all very unique. It's kind of hard to choose like our favorite ones. And I would say that if you all have the time, try to tune into every single one of them, because you're going to learn little nuggets that you might not have known before. And yeah, I can't think of one that I specifically like. They're all such incredible standouts for sure.
They were fantastic. One that does stand out a little bit for me is Dr. T. Colin Campbell's interview, which is on the first day. It's actually about an hour and a half. So I sort of asked him some questions about a few things that he was talking about. And I think he was really excited that I knew some of the research he was familiar with and some of the mechanisms. And at some point he said, "Oh, it's such a pleasure speaking to somebody as knowledgeable about nutrition as you are." And that to me was like, I felt like a kid. I was like, oh my gosh, the grand master is giving me a nod. I just felt like, a 20-year-old, like, wow, that was that kind of stood out for me. I guess ego wise, that was fun, but so much wisdom in there. And he gave a lot of extracurricular time there. It was like an hour and a half. So
Wow.
and so many others. It was just so good, so chock full of nuggets, like Dr. Karin said.
That's fantastic. Oh, there's a couple of questions in the chat asking if you guys ever ingest anything that it's stimulating, like say cocoa powder.
I think, I really enjoy cacao, for example. I have it every now and then. I haven't had it in several months now. And I just notice a difference in my well-being. I would say that if I don't have it, that my energy is pretty consistent from the time that I get up until the time that I go to bed. But if I do have something that has some little bit of cacao powder in it, I notice that I get more of the spiky trough kind of thing with my energy. And I just prefer to have it be pretty consistent. So that's one thing that I noticed from it. So in general, I try to stay away from it, but that doesn't mean that it's completely off limits. In a celebratory context, I think it's perfectly fine, but it couldn't be an everyday thing for me.
Right.
Yeah, and I'm a little different. For me, I just have no interest in any of that stuff. If we make banana ice cream, I put carob powder in there, not cacao powder, and don't drink coffee. Just I don't know, I feel good and have energy from fruits and vegetables. So
Yeah.
why taint it with that other
Right.
stuff?
You sound a little more like Goldhammer, and Dr. Karen sounds a little bit more like Dr. Lyle.
Oh,
there.
isn't
Yeah,
that
there you
funny?
go. That's
That's a
right.
good
The hard
analogy.
line versus the, well, you got to take the social stuff and consider everybody. And
But also,
yeah,
you had your epiphany so young. Maybe that's why you already felt good. It's like you say, you've been doing this so long. There's no reason to mess with how you feel.
that's what I think. Although
That's a
I have
good
to say,
point.
at Dr. Karen's part, she might have, we bought a small thing of cacao powder like 10 years ago.
I
And
was
maybe a
still
few times a year, she puts a little in banana ice cream.
And you probably
So
still have the same container.
Yes,
she's being very
exactly.
diplomatic, but it's in a typical year she probably doesn't have any, and some years she might have it 2 or 3 times.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's neat. Lori says, how many leafy greens will give you enough of these essential omega-3 fatty acids?
Excellent question. So that's coming up in the nutrient analysis of our dressing and our salad, but it takes about 100 calories worth of leafy greens to get about 1 gram of alpha linolenic acid, which is the omega-3 essential fat. Now, 100 calories worth of leafy greens, those of you who like Chef AJ's teaching know that leafy greens are very low in calorie density. So 100 calories is like a pound's worth. It's like a giant head of romaine lettuce or 2 medium heads of romaine lettuce. But if you eat a big salad every day, if you steam up some kale and collards and other greens, that is not at all. If you do any kind of smoothies where you put some greens in there, if you make juices and put some greens in there, it's not at all unreasonable for somebody who's eating a health promoting diet. And then luckily, regular vegetables and fruit also contain, though they're low in fat, but of the fat in there, a significant percentage of it is the omega-3 essential fat. So roughly 1,000 calories worth of fruits and vegetables will also give you about 1 gram of alpha linolenic acid. So let's say you decided to do something just crazy and get the majority of your calories from fruits and vegetables and include a significant amount of greens in your diet also. On about 1,300 calories, you could get about 2 grams of alpha linolenic acid. Again, that's the omega-3 essential fat, and the reference intake for that is 1.1 grams for women and 1.6 grams for men. So it's a
And
considerable amount.
that's per day. 1.6 per day is what you're saying.
Per day,
So if
exactly.
so somebody like me that's eating at least 2 pounds of vegetables a day, I should be okay without nuts or seeds or
You should
taking a
be.
supplement.
That is exactly correct. And that's why on, I think it was your 2020 summit, when we analyzed your fatty acid profile, it looked excellent, including for omega-3s and including converting ALA that's found in fruits and vegetables into EPA and DHA. So absolutely, you're in good shape. And I'm going to point that out when we look at this dressing. I'll point out that there are some omega-3s because we have some chia and walnut in there. But for the whole day, if you take the chia and walnut out, we're still covered for essential fats.
Nice. That's awesome. But people are asking if the caffeine being something that really robs you of energy versus giving you energy, does it apply to all caffeine, even if it's in black tea or green tea, or is it only the caffeine that's in chocolate or coffee?
It's the same stuff. It's the
Right.
same stuff. There's not as much of it in green tea. There's just a little. So going back to that horse, you crack the whip on the horse. The horse, once it's done getting the whip cracked on it, it's more tired than it was before. And then it needs more sleep. But then most people don't sleep enough and they get up and crack the whip on themselves. So it's the same stuff.
Yeah, I suppose with the green tea, there's the added benefit of the phytonutrients in there. So that can help to kind of offset health-wise, maybe some of the issues with the caffeine. At least a lot of people have made that argument in the past. My thought, though, is very similar to what you said a little bit earlier. How about if you get the phytonutrients from fruits and vegetables and you get all the benefit without the drawback of the caffeine.
Right. There seems to be some green teas now that they're decaffeinated that some of the doctors that with breast surgery are recommending, because I guess there's something in green tea that is supposed to be special, other than it's not the caffeine, of course.
Ah, fantastic.
That sounds like
It's
a
good to
better
hear
way
there's
to
an
go.
alternative. Yeah.
And as it just so happens, I'm interviewing her at 2:00 tomorrow on the show, and she's going to talk about it. And she sent me some, and it tasted fine. And I'm very sensitive to the slightest bit of caffeine, and I had no reaction. I didn't feel anything from drinking this. So,
Wow.
yeah,
Cool.
so
That's
so
great to
cool.
hear.
Keep the benefits and you know, have less challenges, fewer challenges there. So that sounds great.
Absolutely. Yeah. So let's talk about this dressing. It sounds amazing. Red bell peppers are great. You know, it's funny. I don't like the green ones because they always give me a little bit of indigestion because I hear they're not right. But the red ones I love.
Same here. Yeah.
We love them. So let's see. Should I start by maybe sharing the screen? We did a little nutrient analysis also, so that we can see the recipe and the nutrients in there at the same time.
And when you want to actually see what it looks like, I've got a picture too.
Yeah, you want to do that first, Dr. Karin?
Sure.
Give them the kind of, instead of being in anticipation.
Photo. All right, so let me just bring the photo up and we can show you what it looks like. Share screen. There it goes. Okay, so can you all see this?
Mm-hmm.
There we go. So as you can see, because it's red pepper hummus, it has like a nice sort of orange tinge to it. And it's probably one of the most flavorful recipes that Dr. Rick and I enjoy. It's just so worth trying. So if you guys have the opportunity to make it, it uses dehydrated red bell peppers. And that's one of the things that we like to talk about is creating flavor without things like oil or salt. So we like to use sometimes dehydrated vegetables to create more flavor. And especially for somebody who's trying out, or should I say starting out, this recipe is a really good springboard for that. So I can stop the share. And if you'd like to continue.
Sure. And peppers and dried tomatoes are a couple of our favorites to really give things a lot of flavor, which is really good. Okay, so let's see.
I'm wondering if can you buy dehydrated red bell peppers? I've never seen them, or do you have to make them yourself?
We make them ourselves.
Yeah,
actually.
We do. That's a good question.
I've never seen
them. I've never
either.
looked. I guess because we, get a big batch and, I spend a few nights chopping them up and sticking them in the dehydrator and then, doing it again the next day. And then we stockpile them for a while.
Guess what? I just Googled it. Yep, you can get them online if people don't want to make them.
Nice. Very good. Okay, so let me share this initial. Okay, so can you all see? It says Chronometer in the upper left, and then you can see the recipe here.
Yeah.
All right. So by the way, this is a huge amount. So I'll show you all in a few minutes when we add the salad that Dr. Karin and I eat. It's a gigantic salad. When you think of getting together with your extended family for a holiday and there's a big, there's 12 or 14 of you and there's a big salad bowl on the table that everybody shares, that's about the size of our salad each night. And then we get enough greens to get all sorts of nutrients, including omega-3s that way. But in any case, we can take a look here. So we have the juice of a couple lemons. So this is a large amount. This might make dressings for like 6, maybe normal size salads. But we put the juice of a couple lemons in there. So Chef AJ, here you go. Onion, right? You talked about that in our interview on the Energy Reset Summit. Everything starts with an onion. So we have some onion in there. I chose one medium onion. It's probably a little less than that. It's more like a bigger onion and a nice thick slice of it, but that comes out about right. About a head of celery, maybe about 12 medium stalks of celery. So we blend that up first, and then we add some chia seeds and some walnuts, and you can see they add a fair amount of calories. And then about 2 or 3, maybe 3 big or 3 medium or 2 really big. They called this large, but 3 by 3 3/4 isn't really. A lot of red peppers are much bigger than that. So 3 medium or 2 bigger red peppers that we've dehydrated, and then we add that in and then blend it all up. So that, and then it looks like what Dr. Karin just showed. Now, if you can see this red part here, there's a pretty high percentage of fat in this dressing, right? So we do not recommend that you eat this like soup. Oh, must be someone's dog there. So we don't recommend that you eat this like soup, okay? It's a fair amount of fat. So you're gonna pour it over a ton of vegetables. Similarly, we would not recommend anyone drink vinegar, right? But when you pour a little bit of that over a salad, then it's appropriate. So in any case, just wanted to point that out. And what we do then is then we see, I've got the celery, onion, lemon, all that stuff. So we put it over a giant salad, and the salad I made that day was a whole giant head of lettuce. And so, I mean, our salad bowls are, what do we think? 12 inches wide by about 8 inches deep. They're like a big commercial mixing bowl. So we got a whole head of lettuce. We've got a few tomatoes chopped up. And the tomatoes, by the way, help add flavor, and they help spread the dressing around too, which is kind of cool. And then I put a few medium zucchinis in there. And then with Dr. Karin, she's got the lettuce, she's got the tomato. Instead of zucchini, she has carrot, cucumber, and dandelion greens typically. That's actually a bit more nutritious than this. And as we can see, the percentage of fat has decreased now. So that whole salad actually has about 35% of the calories from fat. Okay, we don't recommend you do that at each meal, but what this does is it adds some calorie density to a salad so you can make an entire meal out of it. And Chef AJ, I know you'll have some input. For example, if you don't want to use the walnuts and the chia seeds, any chickpeas, for example, seeing it's hummus or white beans or something can be substituted. And then we've got the whole day. So what I did is I started out with breakfast here. And you know what? I think I'm going to shift over to where we can see. I actually have, let me just share a different screen here. Let's see if this works. Okay, can everyone see this? It's the list again, but it's actually I'm on the internet live here. So we can see that what I had for breakfast that day is I made a green smoothie. So I had a cantaloupe, and I actually ate half of it and then put the other half in the blender, added a couple of bananas, added a couple of cups of, it says fresh here because they didn't have a frozen mango listing, but this was frozen mango, and about a cup of frozen cherries, and then about 4 leaves of kale there to make it nice and green. And so that was my breakfast. Later on that day, I sat down and ate 5 oranges. Got a good amount of calories from those. And then I typically, because we like vegetables so much, but vegetables are so low in calorie density, you can't eat necessarily all of them all in one sitting, all of them that you'd like. So I typically have, where did it go here? A head of cauliflower. And I know I'm kind of weird like that. I just love raw cauliflower. It's fantastic steamed as well. I typically eat a head of cauliflower maybe an hour before dinner. And then the rest is what you saw with the dressing and the salad. And now if we can see the amount of fat there is my calculations that actually came out to 13% of the calories, but they've got 12. I think it was 12.9. And that is the way we recommend having this. So again, not as soup, but as a dressing over tons of vegetables. And then the rest of the day, what we consumed was fruit and some kale. And it's kind of fun if we look at the nutrients here. So we can see, for example, and by the way, Chef AJ, I don't know if you teach your participants this, but you can see that there's 28.8 grams of fat. And if you multiply that by 9 for 9 calories per gram, and then you divide that by the total calories, you can come up with your percentage of calories from fat, which again was 12 or 13 here. And if you didn't use the walnut and the chia, and instead you use some chickpeas or some other beans, then that would be considerably lower. And so let's actually go over to this. And this is why I wanted to show this. One of the nice things about this software here, and it's free software called chronometer.com, as you can all see there. When you put the cursor over a particular nutrient, it shows you where it all came from. So you can see that that menu popped up above it and to the left. And you can see that chia seeds supplied 2.7 grams of omega-3, and walnuts supplied 1.5 grams of omega-3. Okay, so you can't see me, but I'm going to say 2.7 plus 1.5, and that's 4.2 grams of omega-3 from the chia and the walnuts. But there's 6.4 grams for the total day. So if I take the chia and the walnuts away, I still have 2.2 grams of omega-3 that day. And you can see the lettuce, even the cantaloupe, the squash, the mango, all those other foods supplied a little bit. And 1.1 grams for women, 1.6 grams for men. I like to see people have 2 grams just because it's such good stuff. And that's not very many calories. 18 calories worth of omega-3s is all you need for the day. So anyway, to help answer that question from earlier, even without the walnuts and chia, there's still plenty of omega-3 there. Another thing I'd like to point out, sometimes we look on these things and we don't completely agree with everything that they show. And we don't always agree with the ads that show up there either when you have the free version. But it says omega-6 here. Gee, I only made it halfway to their omega-6 recommendations. Really, for omega-6 fats, you need maybe 3 or 4 grams per day. You can get that from fruits and vegetables also. You see I got some from walnut and chia, but the other stuff adds up also. So one thing I would disagree with these guys here is if you actually get to 100% on omega-6s, that's not good. That means you've gone overboard, in my opinion. So one place where we disagree. But you can see just for fun, just from fruits and vegetables and some walnut and chia seeds, got plenty of protein there. See, most of these individual essential amino acids are way above the recommendations.
Wow.
Got 1,300 milligrams of calcium.
Nice.
And, kind of a surprise here. Look at that. The oranges supplied a lot of calcium. But then we have the lettuce, the cauliflower, the kale, the celery. So leafy greens still rock the house for minerals, including calcium. Plenty of iron, so I'm not going to be anemic. It's a very thorough, abundant array of nutrients there. How about fiber? Look at that, almost 100 grams, 96 grams
Wow.
of fiber per day. And that's what you tend to see when people base their diet on fruits and vegetables. And of course, you feed all those awesome probiotic bacteria that have all those beneficial effects. And one other thing I'll point out that I didn't make it. Darn, I didn't make it on sodium. I had 647 milligrams of sodium. And you can see there that almost 200 of those milligrams came from the celery, because celery was the foundation of that salad dressing. So a typical day is more like maybe 400 milligrams of sodium. And that's about right. That's about what you get on an SOS-free diet, which is quite sufficient. We need maybe 2 or 3 or so 100 milligrams of sodium per day, depending on the person and their activity and their climate and all that. And
the selenium. So how would we take care of the selenium?
Well, Dr. Karin knows that. She's been talking for years about Brazil nuts. But look, I made it more than halfway on selenium.
Yeah, you tend to see that without the Brazil
chia
nut.
seeds, the oranges, the veggies, added selenium. So a quarter, a third, a half a Brazil nut maybe would cover my selenium needs. And I just about made it on zinc too, another mineral that can sometimes be challenging to get. So anyway, there is a typical day based on fruits and vegetables with a little bit of extra fat in the dressing at night, which again, if you wanted to, you could substitute with something else and have it be lower in fat, like Chef AJ might likes to do. And her fatty acid profile still looks excellent, again, because there's plenty of leafy greens in her diet.
That's the one thing I think everybody agrees we need to eat more vegetables in general and more leafy greens in particular, whatever dietary style we're following, whether it's even not vegan. And most people eat just such a dismal amount of vegetables. A couple of people are commenting, they're worried that Brenda Davis, who's a wonderful plant-based dietitian, saying that some greens are too high in oxalates and it blocks absorption of calcium. What do you say to that? She says to avoid or limit greens like chard and spinach. Is that true?
Yeah, that's actually what we teach. We always say that it's good to focus on the greens that are lower in oxalate. So as far as the ones that are very high, you mentioned chard and spinach. Those are kind of the two big ones. Yeah. So other ones that tend to be lower are going to be a better source of the important minerals that normally would be blocked by oxalate. Definitely. We have a whole section in our class that talks about a lower versus higher oxalate greens. And it's a very important thing to consider.
Goes into the plant families and also kale, lettuce, there were kale and lettuce on our menu there. Dandelion greens, those are super awesome mineral sources, including calcium, that because they're low in oxalate.
Oh, lower, yeah.
Low enough that you can get a lot out.
Nice. People are asking if you guys are raw foodists and if you eat any starch.
So mostly yes raw. And no. Well, yes and yes. We do eat mostly raw food, but we also eat some starches. So our diet's based on fruits and vegetables, but that's not all that we eat. So we like steamed potatoes, quinoa, chickpeas, some brown rice sometimes, and steamed veggies also are fantastic. Great way to get more vegetables in by steaming them. You can eat a lot more steamed broccoli than raw broccoli, for example.
When you eat so sorry, Dr. Karin, but Dr. Rick was saying he eats a cauliflower every day. Do you also eat the green part? Because I love that part.
I sometimes eat that part. It's not my favorite part, but you know what part I really like is the bottom center that most people cut out. It's kind of like the bottom center is where all the flour things come out of. That part I think is really fantastic. But we usually just get it like most people, although we go to a wholesale organic produce supplier, but it comes the same way you get it in the health food store. And most of those green leaves have been taken off.
Yeah, when you steam it, it's just very, very tender. So I really like it a lot. Nice. Let's see if I see any. Question from Kathleen. She doesn't have a dehydrator. And so can you use raw red bell peppers? And Susanna says, do you cut and chop the red peppers before you dehydrate them?
Okay, so
go ahead.
I'll let you take that, Dr. Karin.
Yeah, we, well, first of all, for the first question, yes, you can absolutely use the non-dehydrated red bell peppers. You're going to get not as intense of a taste. It's going to be a little lighter tasting. If you really want a strong red bell pepper taste, then dehydrating them is a good idea. Now, as far as how we prepare the red bell peppers for dehydration, how would you describe how we, well?
Yeah, I like, you chop the top off and then you've got to scoop the seeds out and get that middle stem part out of there and rinse it. And then I typically, if I make the top like an inch thick, I'll try to cut it into 2 half-inch thick slices. And then I'll cut the bottom off and cut that into some slices. And then the rest of the bell pepper, it's now just kind of a waste. I cut that into maybe 3 sections that are a few inches long, and then slice those maybe a half an inch thick and just make little spears, sort of.
Yeah, and if you make them a little thinner, then it will not take as long for the peppers to dehydrate. So sometimes if I want to make this recipe for dinner, when I get up, I'll make thinner slices than what Dr. Rick is describing here and put them in for about 4 to 5 hours, and then they become fully dehydrated. But if you want if you make the thicker slices, as Dr. Rick is saying, it's going to take a little bit longer for
Yeah,
dehydration.
that's more like 18 to 20
18 to 20.
hours.
Yeah, but you can kind of tweak it depending on if you want to make the recipe that day or not. Because sometimes with dehydration, it can take quite some time, but there are ways that you can sort of tweak things to have it work out for that day.
And if you haven't planned ahead at all, and like you can, definitely put just fresh red pepper in there, and that will take the place of some of the celery, and it's still fantastic like that too.
Nice. People are asking if you guys were both vegan before you met, or did you become vegan when you became a couple?
Oh, I was vegan before we met. Yeah.
That's a long story, but
it's a
real
funny
quick story, a real quick story. So I was, let's see. So yes, Karin was plant-based and encouraged that there was some hope for her fatigue when we met. And then she heard more about raw fruits and vegetables from me and my brother. And then she started on that path and then had a lot more energy. And then we were friends for like 10 years. And then 10 years later, we got together as a couple.
That's nice. So you guys are almost like the omega-3 specialists. We have a couple more questions on them. Marcy says, is it possible to get too much omega-3, like if you had a bunch of chia seeds and walnuts? And another question is, does age make a difference in our ability to absorb essential fatty acids?
Okay, so for the first one, I mean, too much fat in general just bogs you down. Fat is over twice as calorie dense as carbohydrates and protein, and most fat sources come with very little water. So that's why chia seeds come in at like 2,000 calories per pound. Nuts come in at 28, or maybe chia seeds are probably a little higher than that. Nuts come in at like 2,800 calories per pound. Whereas raw vegetables are 100 calories per pound. In other words, 25 times less calorie dense. So number one, adding too much of any kind of fat, including omega-3s, can add too much calorie density to your diet. Then there's the other issue that omega-3 fats are very fluid and flexible. They actually make your bloodstream thinner. And if you go overboard on omega-3s, you can make your bloodstream so thin that it actually leaks out of your blood vessels and causes hemorrhaging. The good news about plant-based diets is that ALA, the omega-3 essential fat, is much, much less likely to do that than EPA and DHA are found in fish oil. So when you're on a plant-based diet, your body converts ALA into EPA and DHA as needed. And we know Chef AJ can do that. And in our plant-based curriculum, we show lots of case histories where people can do that. And the good news is you don't end up with too many of those longer chain, super fluid and flexible omega-3 fats, EPA and DHA. Whereas if you consume too much fish oil, so I have a patient who's a fellow healthcare provider who I had a consult with about a year ago, and he shared with me a patient of his who started developing nosebleeds and said that every time they brushed their teeth, their gums were bleeding. They were consuming about 5 grams of omega-3s from fish oil.
Wow.
Whereas there are people who go on various types of programs. Some of you may be familiar with Dr. Brooke Goldner's program for reversing autoimmune disease. She has people consume like a cup of flax or chia seeds per day. A bit excessive in my opinion, but the good news about that is that they don't get excessive bleeding from that. So the plant-based omega-3s are much safer than fish and fish oil omega-3s. And with those, you can go overboard and get too many, and you don't want to have internal bleeding. That's very, very bad, very dangerous.
Right. And we don't, like you said at the beginning of the broadcast, we don't need that much. I remember Dr. Matt Letterman in a New York Times bestselling book, Forks Over Knives Family Plan, said, most people are getting too much fat in every way. And the need for these essential fatty acids is quite small. He said something like as little as like a teaspoon of flax seeds a day could be enough for most people.
Correct. Well, first of all, I mean, even without the walnut and chia in the day I made, I got 2.2 grams of omega-3s, no added fat whatsoever. And then, yeah, a tablespoon of chia, just the chia itself, has about 2 grams of omega-3s per day. So just that alone, 60 calories worth of chia seeds supplies more than enough omega-3. So yeah, we don't need very much. It's critical we get it, but it's not that much.
That's great. Thank you.
And then, and sorry,
oh,
there was a follow-up. There was two parts to that
yeah.
question. One was, can you
Does
get
our
too
need,
many?
yeah, does our need get affected
Oh,
by age? Like, do we need more or less when we get older, or kids maybe need more?
it's probably about the same. I don't, I haven't read
That's a
about a
good question.
difference, but I mean, there might be. But the good news is the people that make their nutrition recommendations, like we saw, there's a couple places where we don't agree with everything, but in general, they're pretty smart. And if some populations need more and others need less, they'll tend to make the recommendations based on the people who need the most, to make sure our needs are covered.
People are asking how you guys store your the dehydrated products.
You want to cover that, Dr. Karin, or should I see? And I've been blabbing away here.
We usually store them in our refrigerator, but before we do that, we put them into mason jars, and then we have a device that vacuum seals them. Do you want to describe the vacuum sealer? Because that's kind of your area.
Yeah, it's just, just regular mason jars. Typically, we put them in the 1 quart size mason jars with the wide mouth mason jars, and we have the lids, and then we have this sealer thing. You put the top over it, and you get some kind of pump that sucks the air out. And we just got a cheapo one on Amazon for 20 something dollars. It sucks the air out. And by doing that, we can keep them in the refrigerator for weeks at a time, and they stay super fresh that way.
Yeah. And
if you don't, they're still good, but vacuum sealing keeps them extra fresh.
Yeah, and I suppose you could freeze them, but the thing is we use them so quickly that just keeping them in the fridge works just fine.
Great. Debbie says, when you have hypothyroidism, is there a limit on the number of cruciferous vegetables and greens that you should be eating?
It depends why you have hypothyroidism. Yeah. So by the way, in our upcoming summit, we have live segments with us each day where we'll share the screen and show you some cool PowerPoint stuff, science made understandable, that go along with the topic of each day. So day 7, we have a section on thyroid. So I'll give you a little preview on that. There's 2 major reasons that somebody might have low thyroid function. One is an autoimmune condition called Hashimoto's, and the other is if you're insufficient in iodine, then you can't make enough T4, which is tyrosine plus 4 iodine. So you literally don't have enough raw material. So if you are really low in iodine and you add mass quantities of raw cruciferous vegetables, there's been one case history in the peer-reviewed literature where a woman who was consuming 3 or so pounds of raw bok choy per day, trying to recover from diabetes, an older woman, ended up in the emergency room in a coma because her iodine level got so low that her thyroid function got so low that everything slowed down too much. That's one case history. So I, for example, eat kale and cauliflower pretty much every day of my life, and I'm not suffering from any hypothyroid condition, which is good news. Occasionally, we use a little kelp or dulse powder. I don't know if, let's see on the nutrient analysis there. Let me see if there's iodine. Minerals. Yeah, it doesn't actually show iodine.
I don't think
it should. So the thing is, if in the rare instance where you're super low in iodine, really, really low, and you have mass levels of raw cruciferous vegetables, that can be a problem. If your hypothyroidism is from an autoimmune condition, then the raw cruciferous vegetables are not going to have any negative impact. You can steam those vegetables also, and then there's pluses and minuses to that. Then the chemicals that may block a little bit of iodine are super cancer protective also. They turn into some other chemicals that are still good for you, but not as cancer protective. So the thing is, for the average person, in other than extreme cases that are incredibly rare, like 1 in 100,000, raw cruciferous vegetables will not damage your thyroid gland.
Great, thank you. Lori's saying, what is the best dehydrator to buy? And what is the best reason for somebody to go raw versus just being whole food plant-based?
Want to cover any of those, Dr. Karin, or should I keep going?
As far as the dehydrators go, we have an Excalibur dehydrator that we've had for, how long have you had that for? 30 years?
Yeah, I bought that in the mid 90s because a friend of mine was selling it, and we've had it ever since.
Yeah.
So we haven't, there's better ones, there's fancier ones, there's newer ones. It's just a 5-tray dehydrator. That seems to work well for us, but we're not like gourmet people making all sorts of fancy stuff all the time. So we're not the best experts on all those gadgets, but the Excalibur is a brand that has stood the test of time, and it seems to work well.
Yeah.
Yep, that's the one I have.
Yeah, oh, good. And do you have like the big 9-tray one?
Yeah, I got the 9-tray because especially if you make things like kale chips, the 5-tray is just too small.
Yeah, like when I mentioned I cut up those peppers, I can only use 2 of the 5 trays because you need room up above.
Absolutely.
Because the trays are so close together. So yeah, that makes sense.
Do you do you still do that program, like in addition to the summit? Don't you teach like some other wonderful classes as well on the science of raw food nutrition?
We do.
The other question, okay, sorry, follow up was, why raw food, not just plant-based? So Dr. Karin, I mean, do you want to take that again? Why that made the difference for you energy-wise?
Well, as far as the energy aspect, I think raw food was really the thing that made the biggest difference for me, no doubt. And then, of course, when you eat more raw fruits and vegetables, that comes along with this wonderful symphony of phytonutrients and antioxidants and lower in calorie density. Really, the list goes on. There's a number of reasons why raw food can make such a big difference for people. Do you have any other things you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I feel lightest and best that way, but just let's be really clear. Dr. Karin and I are very inclusive. If you're whole food plant-based, you are in the right ballpark. From there, we encourage as many fruits and vegetables as you thoroughly enjoy eating. It's not that easy to do to eat 10 pounds of food every day to get all the calories you need. So some starches, some steamed vegetables that are a bit more calorie dense can fill in the gaps there. But I think most people that we know, when they've said, okay, I was plant-based and then I started adding a lot more fruits and vegetables into my diet, typically people will say they felt lighter, they needed less sleep, their brain was more clear, they had more energy, and they just felt better in general. And we would encourage everyone to give it a try, but don't think you have to only eat raw food. Whatever mix works for you, we're happy with. We think everyone should be eating plenty of fruits and vegetables, but the exact amount, everyone has to figure out for themselves. You got to be happy. Otherwise, you won't keep the whole thing up long term.
That's right. For me, I'd say probably about 90 to 95 to 100% raw makes a big difference. For other people, it might be 80 or 70%. But the good news is that you get to decide and figure that out for yourself and see how it works for you.
Yeah, and Chef AJ has shared with us, she eats about half raw food and half cooked food. And the cooked food is really healthy stuff, some starches and some steamed vegetables. That's fantastic. We're in 100% support of that.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Hey, one thing I wanted to mention is people sign up for the summit and they actually buy the summit package. You have this wonderful holiday raw food recipe book that you're giving, and it's got like these carrot cake. Oh my God, it looks amazing. And it's got a secret ingredient in it. That's really cool.
Yes.
Yeah, that's actually, we have a couple of ebooks that we're offering with the summit. That's one of them. That's the one that you get with the entire summit package. If you want to do an add-on, you can actually get the recipe book that has this red pepper hummus in it, along with a variety of wraps and some of our more recent salads and dressings and smoothies that we've come up with. And that one is called the Supercharged Recipe Guide. So there are a number of resources that we have for you if you decide to purchase the Summit package. And that's completely optional. If you come to the Summit for free, you're going to get so much information and lots of recipes to really get you going with eating more fruits and vegetables and just a plant-based diet. Depending on where you are, we have resources for you if you're getting started or if you've been on this path for a while. There's just a lot that you can certainly learn, regardless of where you are on your path.
Right. And Claudia was saying, I think raw plant foods are live foods and they have life energy in them. So that, just adding some of that could help people with their energy as well.
Yeah. I've thought about that quite a bit. I would agree with Claudia.
A lot of people notice that. Yeah. And you asked AJ, sorry, because we're a lot of things we're covering here. So yeah, and we do teach a whole super thorough whole food plant-based curriculum focused on fruits and vegetables, but most of our people, our students, don't eat only raw food. And then we're going to have some smaller classes. That's a super extensive. It's a year long. It's for people who are like super crazy excited about committing their life to plant-based nutrition and learning as much as they can. But we're going to have some smaller classes coming out this fall also, so people can kind of decide where they are, and there'll be some different options for them.
Yeah. And our 12-month class that Dr. Rick is referencing here is called Mastering Raw Food Nutrition. We've been teaching it for 15 years, actually 10 years in person under the name Science of Raw Food Nutrition. And then starting 5 years ago, we switched it to an online format to help to reach people internationally. And that's when it became Mastering Raw Food Nutrition. So it's a science-based course focused on peer-reviewed research, but presented in a way that's understandable and relatable, so much that we can help other people to be able to explain this lifestyle to their loved ones and other people who are curious.
Nice. And you used to teach at Living Light, didn't you?
We did.
We did for 10 years.
We did, and we know you're familiar with them, very familiar with them also.
Absolutely. And you actually used to work at True North. You were one of the first there, weren't you?
Well, True North started in 1985, so I came along in 1997. So I guess compared to now that it's 2021, one of the earlier people there. And then I was there for 4 years, and I was so in my element at True North. I got to have a part-time chiropractic practice, and then the rest of the time be involved with fasting patients and teaching people about healthy nutrition. And it's only because, like I fasted in my dorm, I was young and reckless and enthusiastic. So I wasn't much older at that point. I left True North because I fell in love, and, it was a long distance relationship. And it's like, but guess what? That was Dr. Karin that I left and moved for so she could finish school.
Well, she's a lot prettier than Alan. So I think it's a good choice there.
Good trade-off. Had a happy ending. But yeah, I might still be there if it weren't for that. True North is a phenomenal place, and we have many current and former True North doctors on our summit.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I wish you every success with the summit. I have been posting the link religiously throughout this broadcast that people can sign up absolutely free. And I really appreciate you doing this. I can't wait myself to listen. So because we've got a lot of great speakers, most of whom I'm familiar with, but there's a few that are new to me. So that'll be great as well.
Perfect. Well,
Fantastic.
Again, we wouldn't be complete without you, Chef AJ. And again, that was such an information-packed session we had with you. We got to pick your brain for an hour and hear all these tips and tricks on how to make healthy eating super tasty and fun and sustainable. And when you can put that together along with some motivation, you have a lifetime of health there, which is so amazing.
Absolutely. And you guys, you're SOS free too. So we have more in common than we do not.
Oh, absolutely.
Right. Yeah.
And I just want to say again, like our class, Mastering Raw Food Nutrition, sometimes that scares people away. Well, if I'm not all raw, does it make sense to take? Absolutely.
Yes.
The foundation of a healthy diet based on fruits and vegetables is understanding the foundation of plant-based nutrition. So that foundation is there.
which we
and then
teach.
the fruit and vegetable part just naturally incorporates in. So
Right.
yes, we have more, like, for example, there's people out there that, as you know, Chef AJ, this is what started you and a lot of people with raw food, into the gourmet approach, where there's lots of salt, lots of oil, lots of nuts and seeds. Everything's out of the dehydrator. It's really calorie dense. We have much more in common with your approach than we do with that aspect of raw food, for example.
Yeah, I don't do that anymore. I mean, I wrote
No. Well, you can tell you're nice and lean and you stay that way. So,
I mean, yeah, that stuff was delicious, but man, I think it's still healthier than flour and sugar and oil desserts, but boy, you're right. I
Yes.
mean, you can't outrun the loss of caloric density, unfortunately.
That's right.
Absolutely
Absolutely.
true. Yep.
Yep. All right. Well, thank you guys so much. I look forward to seeing you. And actually, everybody who signs up, I'll be there watching Saturday morning. 9 o'clock. What time does it start?
10 Pacific time. So that is 1 p.m. Eastern time. And for our people in Europe, let me think, that is 7 p.m. or 19 hours Central European time.
That's fantastic. Great. Well, thanks so much,
All
guys.
right.
It was great catching up with you. And thanks all of you for watching another episode of Chef AJ Live. We have a bonus show for you today at 2 p.m. We have a chef that attended the Cordon Bleu. Her name is Felicia Slattery, and she has a new book coming out tomorrow called The Plant-Based Slow Cooker. She's going to be making what I know as simmus, but it's a dish made with butternut squash and carrots, and it's going to be absolutely delicious. Thanks again, Dr. Rick, Dr. Karin, and good luck with your summit.
Thanks so much. Pleasure being here.